On today's episode of Locked On Oilers, the lines are all jumbled up once again. A surprise name at the first line position, so we will talk about that and much more on today's episode of Locked On Oilers.
You're Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Oilers podcast. I am your host and former Oilers game day producer, Brett Holden. As mentioned on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Edmonton Oilers lines, as there's a shocking name on the first line. We'll talk about that in a second. But also on today's episode, the Jack versus Connor argument as the Edmonton Oilers face off against Jack Eichel's Vegas Golden Knights. We will take a look at the Jack versus Connor conversation and see where they are at right now, almost 7 years after they were both drafted. Pretty interesting notes to take a look at. And today we will wrap up today's episode with our Ghost of Oilers past, and he was a journeyman that was selected in the second round by the Edmonton Oilers back in 2005. There's your hint for today's Ghost of Oilers past. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you find your podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Alrighty, as mentioned on today's episode today, we're going to start off with the Oilers lines, and they are something different. The first line, with Evander Kane and Kyler Yamamoto now seemingly out longer than we all thought, they have an open spot in the top six, and actually a couple, because, Jesse Puljujarvi isn't on the first line anymore, as Mattias Janmark has taken his spot on the first line. The first line is Mattias Janmark lining up with Connor McDavid and Zach Hyman. So Hyman off the Draisaitl line up to the McDavid line onto the first line. And that means Ryan Nugent-Hopkins goes to the second line alongside Leon Draisaitl and Warren Foegele, still getting some time in the top six. Now, here's the interesting line. Third line for the Oilers, Klim Kostin, Ryan McLeod, and Jesse Puljujarvi. Puljujarvi demoted down to the third line after only getting an assist over those 6 games on the first line with Connor McDavid. And the fourth line was Dylan Holloway, Devon Shore, and Derek Ryan. Now, the Edmonton Oilers yesterday did send down Tyler Benson, and today Brad Malone called up for the Edmonton Oilers, as it does seem, as mentioned, Kyler Yamamoto will be out longer than initially thought. Now, the defensive pairings are also interesting to me as well. It's all the same, but it's more who is not in the lineup. It's Darnell Nurse and Cody Ceci with each other, Kulak with Bouchard, Murray with Barry, and Marcus Niemelainen, the 7th defenseman. After the game against the LA Kings, I think it is imperative that Marcus Niemelainen is in the lineup for the Edmonton Oilers. They were bullied against the Los Angeles Kings. And to be quite frank, the Edmonton Oilers can't let that happen again. If they want to win hockey games, they can't get bullied. And the only person that can't be bullied, maybe there's 2 of them, 3 really, with Darnell Nurse, Klim Kostin, and Marcus Niemelainen. If you're going to continue to have a guy who will throw 10 hits a game, I know he hasn't gotten there yet this year, but he did numerous times last year with the Edmonton Oilers. Play the man. You're getting out hit. You're getting out gritted. You are getting beat up, and your best players are getting beat up. Why is he on the 7th defenseman? Ryan Murray isn't doing anything. He got the odd offensive play. He has 2 assists this year. Oh well, who cares? That's not what Ryan Murray should be doing. Marcus Niemelainen is there to have some sort of force and power and play with that same force and power in your own end, and you're not playing him. Now, the other interesting thing is that in the starters net at practice today, Stuart Skinner, who would be in line if everything stays the same for his third straight start, the most consecutive starts by either Edmonton Oilers goaltender yet this year. Seems like the starting position is starting to take shape. But let's get back to the forward group here. Again, that's not confirmed whether or not Skinner or Campbell will be playing or starting in net yet, but we'll find out later on. But yes, let's get back to this forward group. Is Mattias Janmark on the first line? Is it warranted? I think so. I think he's played really well over the 3 games that he has been up with the Edmonton Oilers for. He has been very good on the penalty kill, and that also kind of goes with why I think he's also on the Edmonton Oilers first line. Once the Edmonton Oilers kill a penalty, the Edmonton Oilers always stack up the line with McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, McDavid, Draisaitl, RNH, whatever they end up doing. And so once they kill a penalty, Mattias Janmark is likely to be on that ice by then. You can then rest him, load up the line with McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent-Hopkins, and then you can bring out and keep that cycle of the same lines with a McLeod, Kostin, Janmark, or McLeod, Kostin, Puljujarvi. That gives you more flexibility there. Then Fogle hasn't played as well. Then you come out with your fourth line with Dylan Holloway. Let's be real. With Brad Malone being called up, I have a feeling, honestly, that Brad Malone might play that game. I don't know. I just have this weird feeling that Dylan Holloway might not play. But that would be, I don't know. Maybe not, though. I feel like Jay Woodcroft might catch some heat if he does do that. But I don't know. We'll see. There's a reason why Brad Malone was called up, and I think it's just a matter of time once Yamamoto is healthy that Dylan Holloway is sent down. So I kind of like these lines. Other than Fogle on the second line, I don't know. I'm a big fan of the Kostin, McLeod, Puljujarvi line. I'm really excited to see what that line does. Just a line that just goes out there and skates and really goes out there and battles for every puck. And all Puljujarvi has to do is give it to Kostin out front or get a shot with some net presence. And there could be some very interesting things that start happening for the Edmonton Oilers. But I don't know. Very interesting lines for the Edmonton Oilers. And they're all kind of thrown around here, but I don't know. I like it. We'll see how they do against the Vegas Golden Knights tomorrow night on Hockey Night in Canada, 8 o'clock here at Rogers Place. Once again, the lines for the Edmonton Oilers heading into that game: Mattias Janmark with Connor McDavid and Zach Hyman, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins with Leon Draisaitl and Warren Fogle, Klim Kostin with Ryan McLeod and Jesse Puljujarvi, and Dylan Holloway skating alongside Devon Shore and Derek Ryan. The defense of Darnell Nurse and Cody Ceci, Brett Kulak and Evan Bouchard, Ryan Murray and Tyson Barrie, and Marcus Niemelainen, the 7th defenseman there. Stuart Skinner in the starters net at practice with Jack Campbell backing up for now. Now with the Vegas Golden Knights in town, that means we have a rivalry on our hands. And no, it's not Edmonton versus Vegas. It's Connor versus Jack as the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid face off against Jack Eichel's Vegas Golden Knights. Let's take a look into that rivalry between Jack Eichel and Connor McDavid in just a second. But first, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for your sports betting info, stats, and news, along with analysis this year. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, they've got it all at BetOnline. Guys, the next time we talk to each other, the World Cup will be going on. The one that Canada is in. I don't know. I'm starting to get a good feeling about Canada. I don't know. Big win for them against Japan the other day. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Alrighty, as I reach over for my notes, I thought my Ghost of Oilers past was going to fall all over me, and it didn't. That's okay. Connor McDavid faces off against the guy who was selected directly after him in the 2015 NHL draft, and that was Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel being selected second overall by the Buffalo Sabres. That didn't go well. Ooh, that really didn't go over well. In fact, Jack Eichel just recently returning to Buffalo, I think for the second time since the trade this past year as well. And he scored a hat trick and fans weren't happy. But once again, we get Connor versus Jack. Let's take a look at where the two of them are in their careers right now. I'm going to compare stats and then talk about their impacts on their teams in this segment here. But the thing that really jumped out to me, and I know Jack Eichel has played 80 games less than Connor McDavid. But Connor McDavid has more assists than Jack Eichel has points in his career. Connor McDavid in 504 games has 254 goals, 475 assists, good for 729 points in 8 years. That's insane. Jack Eichel, on the other hand, yes, he had his wrist injury, I believe it was, which is, from what I understand, a very difficult surgery. A very difficult injury to come back from. Kyler Yamamoto had a wrist injury. Dylan Holloway had a wrist injury, and I believe Sheldon Surrey came out recently talking about his wrist injury within the Edmonton Oilers organization and it getting infected and stuff like that. Like, a wrist injury is not an easy one to deal with, especially apparently if you're in an Oilers organization, as I just named 3 Edmonton Oilers right there. But Jack Eichel, in 427 games compared to Connor's 504, has 163 goals, 238 assists, good for 401 points. Not even a point per game player in his career, which is actually shocking to me. I was actually surprised by that. Compared to Connor's 729 points in 504 games. Now, the interesting thing here, too, is, and I hear people talk about, plus minus doesn't really matter. Fair enough. I agree with that, especially depending on the team that you're on. You look at the Edmonton Oilers from the decade of darkness, and everybody's going to be in the minuses. But Jack Eichel is a minus 54 in his career. And Connor McDavid is plus 94. What? That was also insane to me. Now, I know Jack played on pretty bad Buffalo teams, but still, I think it's mostly seeing an Edmonton Oiler at a plus 94 that makes me go, oh, wow, that's impressive. But let's take a look at career highs for the two of them. Career highs for Connor McDavid in goals, 54, or excuse me, he hasn't scored 50 goals yet. His career high in goals, 44, which came last year in 2021, 2022. For Jack Eichel, his career high in goals, 36. Assists, career high in assists for Connor McDavid, 79, which also came last year. Where the career high in assists for Jack Eichel, 54. Now, I want to mention Jack Eichel's career high in points first in this one, because his career high in points was 82, which would only be 3 more points than Connor McDavid's 79 assists from last year. That is insane. But the career high for Jack Eichel, 82 points, which came in 2018-2019. Connor McDavid, again coming last year, 123. 2018-2019, arguably the best year for Jack Eichel, where both his career high in assists and points came. 54 assists, 82 points. Now, this year, a little bit of a different story. Now, obviously, everybody knows Connor McDavid. Everybody knows that he is a pass-first player. And his numbers still reflect that. 2 more assists than he has goals this year, but in 17 games this year, 15 goals for Connor McDavid, 17 assists, 32 points. For Jack Eichel in 18 games, 10 goals, 11 assists, 21 points. Now, I mentioned how Jack Eichel isn't a point-per-game player in his career. Not everyone is, but when you take a look at playmakers and guys, especially in the last couple of years, you kind of want that. And now this year, you're seeing it with Jack Eichel in 21 points in 18 games. And you saw it in 2018-2019 when he scored 82 points as well. Very difficult to do. But Jack Eichel forced his way out of Buffalo, is very cocky about it in the interviews and saying, I've never heard the crowd so loud. It made me leaving to get them. So Sabres fans have always been passionate. Just because they sucked and basically your team sucked along with your leadership, quote unquote, doesn't mean that they're a bad fan base. That just means that maybe you're not ready for the big time. And that, I think, is reflected in the playoff stats between the two of them. Jack Eichel has never played in the playoffs. Connor McDavid has 37 games in the playoffs, 21 goals, 34 assists, 55 points. And just last year, I don't know if you remember it, but 16 games played for Connor McDavid in the playoffs, 10 goals, 23 assists, 33 points, leading all the playoffs last year despite being eliminated in the Western Conference Final. Oh, and second place was Leon Draisaitl with 32. Oops. I don't think anybody needs me to say that Connor McDavid's presence and impact on not only his team but on the game is much more than Jack Eichel's. But I think coming out of 2015, the Edmonton Oilers definitely won it. Very exciting to see again that Jack Eichel is in Connor McDavid's division. Now we are going to start to see the blossoming of hopefully more of that Connor versus Jack rivalry, but who knows? We'll see. Then maybe as well, if Vancouver gets first overall, Connor Bedard, we could have Jack Eichel, Connor Bedard, Connor McDavid, Shane Wright, all in the same organization. Heck, maybe even San Jose gets the draft pick. Maybe Connor Bedard is down in San Jose. Maybe if San Jose gets the draft pick as well, or second overall, Adam Fantilli. How about that? A lot of potential top-end talent here in the Pacific Division. Alrighty, let's move into the ghost of Oilers past, as this offensive defenseman became a little bit of a journeyman before settling in Washington and actually getting a Stanley Cup ring when Washington won. There's your second and final clue before we head into our Ghost of Oilers past. We will talk about the Ghost of Oilers past in just a second. But first, I want to thank you for making Locked On Oilers your first listen today. Now for your second listen, make sure you tune in to Locked On Sports Today. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you find your podcasts. Alrighty, as I reach over for my notes, I can't spoil it. I want to make sure I don't spoil the Ghost of Oilers passes. This Ghost of Oilers pass, I think, had a lot of promise in playing in the NHL, and I think a lot of people had a lot of hope for this guy, including me, as he was coming up through the ranks in the Edmonton Oilers organization, as the Edmonton Oilers selected this guy 36th overall in the 2005 NHL draft in the second round. Yes, he was the 6th round pick of that year's draft. Remember, the NHL only had, or sixth overall pick in the second round. 6th pick in the second. You know what I'm saying. Back when there was only 30 teams in the NHL. But not making his debut until 2008-2009 was defenseman Taylor Chorney. Yes, Taylor Chorney, as mentioned, selected by the Oilers in 2005. And like I said, a guy that I think a lot of people had massive hopes and expectations for. Maybe not massive, but second round pick, still have a lot of pedigree to it. He was a relatively not sought after prospect, but he was talked about in his draft year. And the Edmonton Oilers got him 36th overall in the second round. And unfortunately, only got to see Chorney 59 times in an Edmonton Oilers uniform. 1 goal, 6 assists, 7 points were his totals as an Edmonton Oiler, and playing parts of 4 seasons with the Oilers. Most amount of games with the Oilers coming in 2009-2010, where he played 42 games where he didn't score a goal. 3 assists, but the year after in 2010-2011 was off to a pretty good start. 12 games, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. So not bad. Unfortunately, didn't stick with the team there. But here's what happened with Taylor Chorney. On October 11th, 2011, Taylor Chorney was placed on waivers because he was intended to go down to the Oklahoma City Barons, which I have over my shoulder here. But he was claimed by the St. Louis Blues. He played a couple games with St. Louis, only 2 games in St. Louis, and then was placed back on waivers to get sent down to Peoria. Now, the Edmonton Oilers then picked him back up on November 10th off of waivers, and then sent him down to OKC. It was OKC at the time. He finished the season off with the Oilers organization and then signed in St. Louis at the end of the 2011-2012 season. Now, he wouldn't play another game for the St. Louis Blues. He would go and play 73 games the following year in Peoria in 2012-2013. And then the following year, still in the AHL, 69 games for him down there. Did come up with 25 points, which the Chicago Wolves, the year before in Peoria, did get 24 points. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but he came a relatively regular, maybe that's the wording I'm looking for. He became a regular in the NHL somehow. As in 2014-2015, he only played 7 games with Pittsburgh, and then 62 with Wilkes-Barre Scranton, and then played 3 seasons with the Washington Capitals, including the year that they won the Stanley Cup. Now, Taylor Chorney was traded late in the year to the Columbus Blue Jackets, the year that the Washington Capitals won their Stanley Cup. But Taylor Chorney was still given a Stanley Cup ring for his efforts throughout the years. So, Taylor Chorney, Stanley Cup ring champion, I guess. If you get a ring, do you still count as a Stanley Cup winner? I assume so. You can't not. I can't get a Stanley Cup. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, he did play 3 seasons with the Washington Capitals. 62 games in 2014-2015, 55 in 2015-2016, and then 55 games in Washington in the first year, 18 the second year. I believe he got injured, and then 24 with the final year in Washington before only getting into 1 game with Columbus, and that would be his final time in the NHL. He would ship off to Switzerland. He spent 3 years in Switzerland, 2 years with HC Lugano, and 1 year with EC Salzburg. As not a bad career in Switzerland either. 48 games with HC Lugano, got 25 points in his first year, and then 42 games the following year with Lugano as well, only getting 13 points. And then in his final season as a hockey player, 34 games with Salzburg, 14 points, including 4 goals, 10 assists. Unfortunately, in 2021, well, fortunately, I would say, because I'd say that's a pretty solid career for Taylor Chorney. Technically, I'm going to call him a technical Stanley Cup. He got the ring. But now Taylor Chorney is retired, and this is what he said after being retired here. He's living up the retirement life. But here's a quote from Taylor Chorney. He says, "Hockey has always been at the front of my mind, but with some time now to reflect, the friendships and experiences along the way are what I'll cherish." Taylor Chorney, our ghost of Oilers past. And you know what? Sometimes I think it's a little bit of a, not derogatory, but maybe a little bit of a bad thing to say the ghost of Oilers past. But I think it's a nice little remembrance of the former obscure Oilers that used to play for this beautiful franchise. Taylor Chorney, all the power to you, because I was a really big fan of Taylor Chorney. I'm not going to lie. I was really excited to see him play with the Oilers. Happy that he got regular time and was a fan favorite and a teammate favorite too in Washington. So good for him. I'm happy he was also given a ring. That's a nice little tie up together. That's something I learned today doing my research in that. But let's wrap it up there. As mentioned, the Edmonton Oilers welcome in the Vegas Golden Knights at Rogers Place tomorrow, 8 o'clock on Hockey Night in Canada. Jack Eichel versus Connor McDavid. What else could you ask for on a Saturday night? I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Hopefully this weather stays relatively warm like it was today, not like yesterday. That was awful. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, and hopefully at the end of it, we can play La Bamba, baby.